All right. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call of the board members, please.
Just one moment. Gustinelli,
Here.
Robertson,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Racine,
Here.
Yuli,
Here.
Fudge,
Here.
and DeGood.
Here. Everybody's here. All right. I see no public, so we'll move on past public comment and have a review and approval of the agenda and statement of any conflicts of interest.
I'll move we approve the agenda. Support.
Motion by Racine, support by Klein. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Motion passes. All right, let's review the minutes from our June 11th, 2025 meeting.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Chris, I got a quick comment about that.
Sure, go ahead, John.
On bottom of page 4, the very last word, it says occupants. I think it meant to say owners.
Yep.
And just a punctuation clarification, but I don't usually like to mention these, but I think it probably is important on this one. On the very next page, the 8th line down, table subject to the following. I think we better put a colon after following.
All right. Anyone have any other further thoughts?
Does that make sense or not?
There's only one item in there. It could be,
Well,
are you rethinking it, John?
Didn't we redo it?
on this one, no, it was a different one that we redid. That was item 7B.
Okay, just double check.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
So subject to the following, colon, addressing the outstanding items.
I think
Is that what you were doing?
I think
Okay.
that's what you did,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
but it probably ought to just be cleaned up punctuation-wise.
okay.
But if the motion to approve the minutes as amended is
As
made,
amended, yes.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Fudge, support by Racine. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion passes. Next, any correspondence? Look, I'm not seeing any.
We do not have any correspondence.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to reports. Anything from the Township Board, Molly?
Nope.
Anything from any planning commissioners? Zoning Board of Appeals?
Yes, sir, we had a meeting last week. We had a repeat customer from the south end of the lake complaining about a drainage problem with her neighbor. She was in, I don't know, many months ago, and we thought we had it all worked out, and she filed another complaint complaining about the way the enforcement was being done by the zoning department. Anyway, long story short, we asked her to bring us some real information, and we tabled it.
Which lake is that, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Silver Lake.
Silver Lake?
Silver Lake, yeah, 1661.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, that's it.
All right. Well, Parks and Recreation Commission didn't meet, so I have nothing to report. Anything from the Joint Planning Commission?
Not till about the middle of next month.
All right, very good. Does staff have anything to report?
Yeah, so yesterday at the board meeting, we had the introductions. They were on consent calendar for both the zoning ordinance amendment and the Scussel rezoning. Also, you may have seen in the ticker or the Record Eagle recently about the zoning atlas open house. Steve and I will both be attending that tomorrow afternoon. It's being hosted by the county and Housing North. So just a comment about that. I think we have not really been involved in that, and there are, I think it's important for people to understand our zoning, when you look at our zoning map, can be a little confusing because some of the zones on our map don't necessarily correlate with some of the uses that are on the ground, because historically the township has utilized plan unit development quite extensively. So you'll see a lot of developments that are still zone agriculture or R1, but are built as residential developments or commercial developments and so forth. So that's one thing I just kind of want to let them know, that we do have, if you go to our zoning map on the township website, we do have another layer for PUDs, so you can see that. So just something that we just want to kind of share with them as they go forward managing that, so people have a better sense. But we're always available when applicants come in, or, for pre-discussion meetings in terms of zoning, options, locations for development and so forth. So, but anyways, that's all I have to report.
All right, thank you, John. Well, with that, we'll move on to unfinished business, starting with PD 2025-60, Draft Capital Improvement Plan.
I'm gonna have Steve kind of go over this. This is just a rough draft at this point. We thought we'd kind of warm you guys up to what's been going on. The CIP committee continues to work at this, and but we thought it was a good way, after our little training session, to kind of segue into actually see what kind of the draft document looks like, just to kind of orientate yourself.
Yeah, and thanks to John, he's been taking the lead for the planning department on the CIP and working directly with the CIP committee and attending those meetings. But I want to at least give kind of start with an overview and then just kind of show you what's in the draft plan. We're not anticipating the planning commission, or at least at this meeting, get into a lot of details on specific projects that are listed in there. Even the planning department has not gotten into details on some of those, especially water sewer. We'll ask the engineer on that one. But just as a recap of background, we did some training from the MSU Extension, had a webinar, and we watched that at the last planning commission meeting. Sort of gave the overview of planning commission's kind of role in a CIP and why a community would prepare one. How it's linked to other policies like the master plan or strategic plan of a community. The CIP committee, or capital planning committee, is doing a lot of the legwork of kind of forming it, and it has the supervisor, 2 trustees, a representative for building and grounds, and parks and recreation, since those are 2 of the kind of main categories of capital expenses for the township. The manager, the engineer, and the planning director. So they've met now in April, May. It does say they're expected to finalize the CAP at their meeting on June 24th. They actually did not meet yesterday. That meeting was bumped. So there's probably actually less to talk about tonight with that. But we wanted to at least give a kind of draft overview of the draft that's out there right now, and then like in future years, since this is connected to the master plan, it might also inform how we do some of the master planning in the future. But we do have a master plan implementation matrix that lists goals and objectives, and some of these projects are tied directly to those goals. So we have like for natural resources, natural environment, we have a goal of promoting natural environment protection in a planned and strategic manner. Many of the parks projects tie directly to that, or our own development reviews if they involve some amount of wetland protection, something like that. Water quality, we have a water system as the township, so a lot of those infrastructure improvements are to safeguard water quality. There's goals in energy, parks and trails, that's a specific category all on its own for capital expenses in the parks. Sidewalks can be part of that. Water and sanitary sewer, also the other big engineering capital, and any partnerships or collaborations that promote public safety that might involve some capital expenditures. That could be equipment. That could be a building that has shared usage out of it with public safety. So these are kind of the goals of the master plan as they tie in. And I imagine once we have a final CIP, the sort of analysis would at least give a summary of like the specific projects, how they fit into each of those goals as they tie into master plan goals and objectives. But otherwise, what is in the packet is what the CIP committee would have received yesterday. They received the packet, they would have discussed it yesterday. And it sort of has a background of, I'm not going to read everything specific, but wanted to give at least, there's a lot of background information, kind of the intro of why it's together, existing, this like a summary of the existing parks, facilities, infrastructure. Part of the CIP includes an asset inventory. This is actually one of the things on your desk, side note. The way it printed in your packet was a little off if you got to that page. So we formatted it the way it was supposed to happen. You can utilize that one. But like any sort of assets containing items valued at like 10,000 or more, with CIPs there's a threshold of what counts as like a capital project, and communities can define that 10,000 is sort of a typical or common way to do that. But assets we sort of divided into anything in the township office, things with the building, things with the HVAC, the 3 vehicles, or 3 township vehicles, other equipment, things at each of the parks are a category, and a couple of medians. The township's responsible for the median at Logan's Landing, and also along Woodmere. We actually have an irrigation system in the one in Logan's Landing. So part of kind of being able to compile this together is to help both the township board, when they do the budget process, know what needs to be replaced or what's kind of on the radar as like a major project that's coming, and then to help staff in managing things as they come up, knowing what projects need to be, if something is coming up, do we need to scope out what's the scope of a project, getting bids, working with someone like the engineer, Gordy Frazier, to put that all together. So asset inventory is a big part of it. This part of the CIP kind of gives a narrative to all of that. I'm going to skip all of the details of it. The township actually owns some cell phone towers, the one at Day Drive, and then the antenna that are on Heritage Way. Street lights. One of my winter projects was putting a GIS map together of all the street lights, including some that the township contributes to paying for. And then participating as part of special assessments for road improvements in especially subdivisions. The township road commission and property owners jointly share in the costs of those. So the township typically, I think, is 25%. That it sounds. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So we talked about all the groups involved in putting together the capital plan, because it's a very high level kind of look at all of the projects. It really involves and can involve anyone at the township. So lots of the different commissions, the board, and a lot of the staff. And so this is part of wrangling it together. That is how it's going to be adopted, but then actually selecting the projects. So criteria for actually including things in the CIP. Does it support the strategic plan, master plan, park and rec plan, any other policies of the township? Plan commission will be looking at how it meets those goals and objectives of the master plan. Will a project help the township, or is it needed to meet a regulatory mandate, federal, state, or other? Is it necessary for public safety? Does it help improve quality of life, such as a lot of the parks projects? For example, a playground at River East, which I think has greatly impacted and improved a lot of people's quality of life from what I've heard on the reviews of it. Review how it actually does impact operations, knowing that if you're going to do a capital project, how does it affect how you're going to have to maintain that? When does it have to be replaced? What does annual maintenance look like? Can you do cost sharing? You don't want to necessarily rely on grants, but if you can get grants that help offset the cost, can that make projects more palatable? What grants is the township eligible for, or specific projects, what are they eligible for? Timing and location. And this kind of ties in with coordinating with other agencies. Like if the road commission is working on a project, they're already going to be tearing up a road. Is there something that the township might have a stake in that would make sense to do at the same time? So you don't have to tear up the same thing in back-to-back years. So kind of coordinating, and does it help the township innovate and operate more effectively for the community? So there's actually the specific definition of what kind of turning those criteria into specific definition, and then talking about all the different sources of funding. There's the millage, that is the kind of primary, the property tax for the township, but then some projects are through special assessment, some can be grants. Township has the ability to bond for major projects. I don't think we have anything currently bonded because we're in pretty good shape, but there are some things that charge for user fees, so accounting for that. There are other tools out there like TIF financing, and some where there's enterprise funds, like water and sewer have an enterprise fund. Let's see. And then most of the rest of the CIP actually gets into the specific projects, and we say it's a rough draft because the way this is set up, so a lot of these account for some that are just underway at the moment from 24 and 25, and I think especially in the first year of the CIP, some of this will be taking stock of what's out there, and as things finish up, and hopefully we can just finish things that are kind of out there. Wondering what the current status of some of them are. But then the sort of key year for the CIP in terms of influencing the township board and their budget process would just be the next budget year for 2026. Things beyond that is sort of what's on the radar. There may be more details that need to be determined. Some of those costs would be very rough estimates, but it's sort of, we have at least some idea of what we might want to do, keep it on the radar, and it gets closer to actually wanting to do it, get the details of, okay, what would it actually take to do it? And that might influence, does it get kicked out? Does it get scope reevaluated? But to try to account for those things. So water and sewer, a lot of that information was provided by the township engineer. One question I actually have for the township engineer as well is they're going to know specifically about like the details of what goes into the engineering of a water tank or a PRV, but mostly for like to tie it back to planning is how would that influence like the capacity of development in the area of that improvement. We have we included the water and sewer sort of high level line maps in the master plan, and we looked at it in developing the master plan along with existing land use and potentially future land use. For example, the water that was extended up to Long Lake on Cedar Run Road, that influenced sort of taking another look at that northwest corner of the township. In the previous master plan, it was more still ag and rural land, and in this master plan was recommended for at least low density residential. There's sort of more capacity to serve that area. So some of these projects would be, how does that impact the overall system? Are these improvements in current locations? Are they expansions? Are they a mix? of those. So sort of mapping these out would kind of help visualize that.
Is that something you're suggesting that you could do?
I would ask the engineer. We were kind of thinking. I actually was kind of thinking this earlier today when we were looking over this again. I was like, yeah, this would make a lot more sense in map form, and I'm sure the engineer may even have it already, but I haven't asked specifically.
Maybe not even a map. I'd be interested in what the rest of the planning commission thinks, but maybe just 2 or 3 sentences that says, the McRae PRV replacement impacts development and impacts planning and zoning in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have something that we're judging, because I'm not even sure that a map of the location, and I know what a PRV is because I'm a civil engineer, but probably generally telling everybody, again, I'm thinking 2 or 3 sentences. We don't need, War and Peace on each one of these, but, and I don't think just showing a map of where it is necessarily will help us.
Sure. Yeah.
Just an interpretation from staff to say why it's relevant to planning. What do you guys think?
I think a map with annotation would hit the nail on the head, right? Like, where is it and
Sounds
how
good.
does it overlay with the master plan and how does that feel and tie in with the other pieces, if that's possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. There's the spreadsheet here, but then there's the tables afterwards, and there is an area there that we can insert text. So it can description, and we can have it on the map. Like, for instance, the first one, the McRae PRV replacement, that's at the foot of McRae Hill on the, kind of near the Cracker Barrel, and that's to basically help with pressure issues in the Cracker Barrel, Sam's Club area. So we could put that on the map and then maybe have a description of what that pressure reducing valve is actually doing in that particular area.
And it was sort of concurrent to the Gauthier review, because I remember part of it, I think the engineer was, Jennifer was saying it was where it would be like ideally located would be on an easement on that. And I think they were able to do that. Yeah. So that was sort of parallel to the normal stormwater review that also occurred on that site. But yeah, it was a pressure issue. I think isn't there somewhere else in the township that had like a pressure issue? I'm thinking of like southeast.
Burnley Hills previously.
And then they were able to do something. I think there was smaller, but if something was needed like longer term beyond what they already did to kind of relieve some of those pressure issues, that could be a future project.
I like Kara's idea of putting it on a map. I really just want to reiterate a couple of sentences. I suspect all of these have a substantial reason behind them, so we don't need to read paragraphs to judge whether they are appropriate or not.
Right, yeah. So another reason why this was draft is like, yeah, that portion of it needed some filling in, but yeah, even a couple sentences of just overview of like, this is why this category is here and why these things are relevant, and this is the specifics of some of them, more like even bullet points at that point for each one. Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to go as far as, so if we're going to put in a new sewer line, for example, identifying, here are 40 different parcels that might benefit from that piece, if you've got, okay, well, we have, based on what we have in our master plan, we could have 75 units there, or 50 units there, or something. It doesn't have to be acreage-wise, but just identify, so you got the parallel between, okay, we're going to do this work, and then we have the potential to do this on the other side.
Yeah, sort of the
Go with it. But.
the impact of, yeah, this based on like for a sewer line, what size it is, what is its actual capacity, and then as the planning commission look at, all right, well, what's around it in terms of the parcels, their future land use, their zoning, does that make sense given what's around it? Or does it need to be upsized based on, what's actually around there could actually be more capacity.
There or something else that is going to require.
No, I think that would be good too. Yeah, so sort of long-term impact, so I'm gonna take notes as we do this, so. Long-term impact of improvement compared with its location.
Anyone else have any other thoughts?
I got a question on the report on page 9 about tax income and financing. The very last sentence says the township doesn't have any TIF authority. I wasn't sure if that means we don't have the ability to do any TIF, or we don't have like a capital A authority, like a
We don't have
Bay Area Transportation Authority. What did it mean?
We do not currently have any TIF fund, we don't have any TIF programs currently.
Yeah, but actually we do now. I mean, we've taken advantage of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority that the county has on a couple of projects. So it's not, it's like we don't have, I guess it's meant to say that we don't have a TIF authority that's outright township authority.
Like a corridor improvement authority, or,
Right.
So should that be a capital A, maybe, like?
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll clarify that because I think the township has utilized TIF in the case of the Brownfield for the former Kmart, and then the Gauthier project is another one that was gone through the County Brownfield Authority.
Mhm.
So not necessarily a township authority, but the township board worked in concert with the County
Yeah.
Brownfield Authority.
They were more site-specific TIF or brownfield than like a district, yeah. We don't have like a TIF district. Okay.
I had one more, just curiosity. No familiarity with the township budgets, just not something I've historically paid attention to. So what I noticed was that, we start out at the annual total in the CIP in this draft. 6.2 million, or actually almost 6.3 million for projects underway 24-25. And then up to 10.35 million for 26, 11.2 million for 2027, and then in 2028 it drops to 1.6, and then it just seems to I would expect it to maybe be more level or even just slightly increasing, assuming our tax base likely increases year to year a little bit, so there's a little bit more money in the kitty. And then I thought about it more and okay, there's going to be spikes when we get a big inflow of funding from a state or federal source that pays for some big project. And I don't know if that's actually what's driving the irregularity, or what are your thoughts on what sort of, the variation in the annual budgets?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what this tool is intended to do, is to get to that point where you can kind of minimize the fluctuations. This is a little, so when you look on those totals like you're referring to on the bottom of page 13, a big part of the influx is the big capital costs in the water sewer program. Those are significant. And it's a user-based system that's looking at making some considerable investments and impacts into the system. Quite honestly, I think that's what this process will allow us to get a better handle on. I know the committee itself, we're relying a lot right now on the engineer. And I think that the intent is this should be ability for that committee, and more importantly, the township board, to fully understand the impact of these projects. Even though those are kind of enterprise funds, they're funded by the users that are in that system, but nonetheless, we should have an understanding of where those are, what those are doing, what's the impact, what's the timing of those. There's some major projects here identified in a very short period of time. So this at least helps to illustrate that, as opposed to just looking at them as individual projects. Now we get them laid out in this form, so we can do that analysis and say, wow, there's some, what is the capacity of the of the water sewer system as well as the township and its general fund budget to take on these expenditures. And so that's, I think we've kind of just plugged these in, a lot of these, and now it's time to kind of really start taking a little bit of a dive and seeing, at least this kind of lays it all out. You don't see it when it's, there's a project here and a project here. This is bringing it all together, laying it out so that there isn't that, up and down, and that it's more even. And maybe it's, in the case of the water sewer system, I don't really know, but maybe that ultimately will be to some extent like that. But certainly the other projects under the general fund, or the parks fund, could be stuff that's done more evenly, and so that it isn't a big, hit to the fund at any given time, or grants, or whatever the funding source is. So that's what I think we're excited to kind of have this ability to lay that out so that the board can make those informed decisions.
Probably a further refinement of this would be to break out that total into like impact on township general fund, things paid for by enterprise funds, things paid for by grants if there's known grants. Because I think probably water sewer are the biggest things that are enterprise funds. I don't think there's another one that would be that big, and I don't know if there would be any specific impact, even like a match on the township general fund for something like that. Question for the township engineer, but yeah, I think still seeing like what its overall impact, it's still going to impact capacity of an overall system, and will impact like what we're doing in planning, what we're reviewing, and what might come down the pike for us. So what is, I guess, more the even like further downstream effects. But yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, seeing it kind of spike like that, I would want to see it broken down more to like, right, what's the kind of true impact? And actually, can the enterprise fund handle that? We assume like there's ability to do that, but does that mean, is there a big savings account that they can just draw from? Do they need to bond? Does the township need to bond to actually smooth that out? So more of that is the fiscal kind of downstream effects. The half of the webinar that we didn't watch was more on like the treasurer's impact of it, and I think there's other. Once I get this into finance, it's out of my realm. My dad was an accountant. I could ask him, yeah, how would you have laid this out?
Well, and what I'm hearing from both of you is it's a work in progress.
Exactly. Yeah.
You expect to see more information on this, as well as an evening out. It might not even be this year. It might be something that takes place over a series of years. You got to start somewhere. So
Yeah, that's why it's a
glad to hear
little
that.
awkward where we already have some projects underway. We wanted to include those just to have some sense of it. But yeah, I think this first year is going to be, it's a learning curve for all of us. But the goal is to have understanding what those expenditures are on a consistent basis so that the decisions can be made appropriately.
John, you look like you might have a question.
I was curious, there's a whole bunch of projects listed on a couple of pages. How did that list get compiled?
I can tell you specifically so water and sewer, we mostly relied on Jennifer and her team, Gordy Fraser, kind of knowing the capacity of our water sewer system and what, especially from a technical perspective, what needs to be upgraded or what projects were coming down the pike. Parks came from the Parks and Rec Master Plan, translating that from the action program to putting it in this format. And I think in a future update to the Parks and Rec Master Plan, we would probably include this as an appendix rather than doing a separate action program, especially once we have a few years to kind of refine this process. Non-motorized facility also came somewhat from both the Parks and Rec Plan and the Township's Master Plan, because we have a non-motorized plan in the Master Plan. And these were specifically ones where the township had some amount of either contribution or expected contribution if they connected a park to a park, or some of these, another funding source that's not accounted for here is ARPA. So some of this was ARPA projects. And then the road improvements were special assessments. I think the board always, does the board take the applications for special assessments? So anything that were either underway, I think all of those are underway. I don't know if there's any known ones for the future, but I think those are the four that were two that were underway. The other two things are ARPA projects, the mast arms and the Logan's Landing median. And they identified one category. There's sort of a catch-all general expenditure, and one is an IT for doing BSNA cloud, sort of upgrades to our BSNA is building something assessing, but it's our electronic record keeping.
How was it determined what year these various things were going to get tackled?
The highest priority ones, or the ones that we know the most details, that we've already kind of identified for 2026, were kind of scoped out already. The other ones in the future were sort of just estimated where they are, and they're very much subject to change. A lot of it was just trying to even it out somewhat.
Yeah, most of those were, a lot of them are, the headings are by park. And then within each park, there's kind of the phased process based on, what would make sense to kind of start working first and then extending it outward. But quite honestly, that's those, in terms of the projections and the amounts, those are just, a lot of those are kind of placeholders. They're going to need a lot more information to really, and that's the thing. The one that's probably the only fully accurate, or the one that's going to be most concise, is the budget year. So that's, as part of this plan development, the most important part is the 2026 budget year. The other ones are just kind of placeholders. They need more refinement. They could be pushed out again, or they could be dropped ultimately. But they're always kind of in that state of flux.
If any planning commissioners or other people thought of any other potential projects, how and when should that get communicated?
You mean in terms of if there was an addition to this or an
Yeah.
amendment?
Yeah.
So the goal is to have that committee be the one that evaluates a project and then makes a recommendation to the township board. That was one of the things I was thinking, is I know that sometimes the township board is approached by outside agencies as well, that to participate in funding of projects, and sometimes it was kind of all of a sudden just kind of placed on the agenda for the town board. And this would be a process whereby any project, whether it's internally or externally coming to the township, could be evaluated and then determine, should it be placed in the CIP? Maybe if it is, should be farther out, or whatever that recommendation. And again, this is just a guide to the township board as part of going through their budget process. But yes, it can be amended anytime during the year for projects. So it's purely a planning tool.
And John Racine, to report on the Parks Commission, that we spent a fairly substantial portion of our last meeting reviewing the draft CIP, even to the point of giving our representative Denise, who's on the CIP and on the commission and on the parks and she's a trustee, we gave her a hard time because the CIP had decided to pull something off. And the Parks Commission was like, whoa, we want that back on. And I see that it has been added back on. So all that to say, I think that there was a substantial amount of discussion about transforming our master plan into information in the CIP. And I would, encourage you or anyone, organizations or members of the public to attend one of our meetings. And I would think that if anybody simply just made a statement, hey, there's a project I'd like to see considered as a park improvement, then people should step forward and bring it to the Parks Commission's attention so that we can consider it. And because we make recommendations to the Board of Trustees. That's all the power that we have. And we make recommendations based on the things that we're aware of and we think are good ideas, but we're always looking for more good ideas.
I've got one thought that just kind of crossed my mind recently as I was looking through this from the Planning Commission's perspective. It's not necessarily a park or a highway or anything else, but you've got a lot of these categories of projects broken down, and it shows what the projects are listed under all those. And one thing that struck me as I looked on page 21 under land acquisition, there's nothing shown. And I know for years I've had a dream that someday the township buys that old MDOT rest area off of McCray Hill that's been for sale forever, and God help us if somebody buys it and does something with it. And I've sort of facetiously tried to urge supervisors, like maybe the township could buy that, but I don't know whether that's something that the committee could discuss at some point. I don't know whether the township's got any interest in that, but I've always thought it'd be kind of nice if we took that off the market, but can't take it, so gotta buy it.
Why don't you, we can make that a consideration issue, at least for Parkland.
We actually looked at it as a potential ARPA project. We were looking at as a gateway sign location. We walked the site actually, and it wasn't really going to work out. But for other purposes, in terms of, land preservation of the view shed and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's right up the category, natural resources, natural environment, natural environment protection in a planned and strategic manner. If we could grab that and keep it off the market. It's one person's thought, but I thought if this is starting to happen, I'd like to at least throw that out for the CIP committee to consider whether or not there's any value in that, and maybe there isn't, but
No, absolutely.
sounds like I better speak now or it's not gonna happen.
Maybe this is more for the township board, but, find some way to show what projects are going to be taking from our tax revenue. That's our general revenue. And which ones are we going to have to find other ways to finance? We're not financing $10 million
Right.
for a year. We couldn't do that unless we pulled everything out of our general fund and everything out of the tax that was coming out, all of that. So a way to color code those things so that okay, if you think you're gonna spend $5 million, okay, how are you gonna, where's it coming from? Some of it's going to be user-based, and then we'll already know that, So, but when you're looking at this, you can't tell.
We can, I think there's a couple of ways we could do that. We could break it out as kind of some subtotals. We could also put some pie charts or pie graphs together with some data attached to that, just to kind of illustrate where those breakdown of the sources for those would probably help.
Yeah, this project would be really nice, but, it's gonna cost $10 million and we don't have it, so.
Right. Well, and
how are
that's
we
what
gonna
this
do
is,
that?
exactly, this is what it's intended to do, so you see everything all at once, because it's a lot for the board to take on as they're constantly requests being made.
Well, we'll be asking, where's the money coming from?
Exactly.
So, can have a lot of dreams, but.
Any more thoughts from the commission? Well, if staff doesn't have anything else, shall we move on to our next agenda item?
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, this is, like we said, a draft and also a first go at this entire process. This will be refined not only to kind of get it going this first year, but as we use it throughout the first couple of years, kind of refining that process. But ultimately, it is a tool to help the township board, the staff. Just sort of as a quick example, it was one of these, one that's not on here at the moment, but we just learned about today was getting an updated plotter for printing out either large posters like that, or occasionally plan sheets, or like the kiosk posters for the parks, and scanning in documents when we get them, when we get large plan sheets and they don't otherwise have a PDF, especially older plan sheets. That plotter was like, okay, that's a major capital thing. Part of the planning for it is, do we need to replace that right now? And that would be a township board. Is there something in a contingency to cover that, or was it already planned for? If we can get it planned out for a year in advance, then it's already covered, that we know we're going to replace it. It's sort of like trying to wrangle all of those ideas to, as much as possible, plan ahead. And then if an emergency comes up, all right, does something need to get swapped out, bumped, or brought forward because it's more of a priority? it sort of just helps that process, because there's seeing like this list and the asset inventory is like, there's actually a lot going on for a township of 20,000. There's a lot of things going on, so.
Well, we look forward to seeing
Yeah.
a revised version and
Mhm.
considering it. And
Yeah.
I assume we'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees?
At some point, yeah, the CIP committee, I don't know, did they reschedule the meeting from yesterday?
Yeah,
or-
we'll, at some point, I'm not sure when,
Yeah.
we'll come in front of you and make a recommendation to the town board.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Next item on the agenda, PD 2025-61, follow-up information regarding the corridor plan for South Airport Road.
Yeah, so we had a conversation last study session about South Airport Road corridor. I'm just providing you with some information here. I don't need to go into a lot of this, isn't necessarily new. I did want to at least point out, there's an excerpt here from the East-West Corridor Transportation Study, which was completed by the Grand Traverse County Road Commission in May of 2019, and just wanted to highlight one of their recommended solutions. They had some short-term solutions, and if you look at, in the handout, it's on page, highlighted as page 48, and talked about access management plan. And so it says right there, you know, it talks about it's something that's easy implementable project. It would be a partnership between the township in terms of its zoning ordinance and the county road commission standards. And it's something, you know, the first one it said is an access management plan for South Airport Road should be developed. This would include the establishment of a corridor framework for access management improvements as part of any redesign or reconstruction efforts. So I did actually, I don't know how many here have ever used an access management plan, but I did actually print out on your desks is this 11 by 17. This is an excerpt of one that was done up in the Petoskey area. It was actually done by several townships, the city of Petoskey, MDOT, I believe the Emmett County Road Commission. And this is the type of document ideally that while an access management plan talks about different ways to manage, and we talk about access, it's basically access from the roadway to the land use that's adjacent. And that interface between transportation and land use is really important. So this actually gets down to kind of the details of actually looking at that corridor and prescribing different changes that should happen, whether it's talking about modifying entryways or removing driveway entrances and so forth. And so this is kind of the type of document that ideally would be provided along a corridor that you really want to manage access. And when this applies is when, for instance, let's say we're doing a site plan review and it's a drive-through restaurant and we're looking at it on a site that already has an existing building. Maybe it has in this access management some changes recommended for relocating driveways or doing shared access or whatever. So we would work in concert with the road commission in doing our review, and both of us, both the road commission and the township, would be looking at the access management plan to see what it makes in terms of recommendations for that interface between the land use development and, in this case, South Airport Road. So this is kind of an illustration. Just wanted to kind of show that what we're talking about when we talk about access management and an access management plan. So I envision a document like this ultimately to be adopted by both the township and the road commission so that we work jointly together. So it's those little tweaks that can really impact the flow of traffic. You know, we're talking about, you know, things such as, you know, moving driveways, some median areas, you know, shared access, cross access. I know a good example, if you recall, when we did the MSU Federal Credit Union there across from Myers, is there used to be two development sites there, And there was 2 driveways. It was reduced down to 1 driveway, and actually has connections potentially, should the Big Boy Restaurant to the north be altered, or the Pine Grove Homes development to the south, if that were to change in any ways, would allow for, there's actually an easement in place going across the front of that building so that their parking lots are connected. But in that case, they reduced the number of driveways, kept the driveway that's aligned with the Meyer driveway across so that turning movements are nice and clean and not conflicting. So that's just, in a microcosm, was a little bit of access management. Ideally, I mean, we didn't have an access management plan, but we utilized the master plan and through the zoning ordinance, came up with some of those changes there. The access management plan would probably better prescribe how that would actually go along the entire corridor. So. But that's, I think it's exciting to see that that's what was in the east-west corridor plan, and I think that's something that never really kind of went forward, but I think that's something, I know our township manager has been in discussions with the road commission manager on just keeping informed on different things. And so this would be something that we could ultimately have some conversations about.
And you're, as I understand it, you're suggesting that this access management plan for the South Airport corridor would be a component of the South Airport Road Corridor study that you're proposing?
Correct. This would be one key component to that.
And as you're developing the plan to engage in that, is it going to be mostly a staff-driven exercise?
Yeah, I think we have the capacity to do that. I think between our, as land use planners and as the transportation engineers that the road commission has, as well as they do rely on some consultants. I could see us maybe relying on some consultants, but on a very limited basis. It would be, for instance, if we wanted to do a market study to determine the economic development of that corridor. That's something that's a pretty simple, it's not a big cost, but it's very defined. And that's not something that we have the expertise of, but we see the value of it in terms of planning, particularly looking at this corridor, not just as transportation, but as a economic development hub, is important to understand the dynamics of the local economy. So that's something that we could farm out, but in terms of pretty much all the stuff, in terms of planning process, that's something that we do have the capacity in-house to do.
I, for one, was impressed by the schedule that you guys came up with for the master plan work that we did that ended the middle of last year. There was a schedule you guys laid out for identified activities. And I mean, this group, and through their leadership, really stuck to that plan. And we ticked off all the things that we needed to do. So I would presume that, this is a teaser of things to come for the development of that sort of broad plan and schedule for the corridor master plan.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm just trying to share this with you. This is something that I still need to take to the township board to see if but I just thought it would be good to have that follow-up information to you.
John?
That was exactly the clarification I was thinking. So you're not looking for direction from us, you're hearing positive vibes from at least whatever you're hearing is positive, and I guess the next step is you're gonna run this up the flagpole with the town board, and if, depending on the reaction to that, then maybe we're off and running, or maybe we're not, but.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just at this point, just that continued conversation.
Yeah.
I did also include in the packet, this is really the PowerPoint here is really not anything, not really any new information. It's just in the form of a PowerPoint, but this was in our memo last month, just identifying the importance of South Airport corridor. If you just go to the next slide. It's a 6-mile corridor if you measure it straight from Silver Lake Road east to 3 Mile. So that does include areas within East Bay, commercial area, big major east-west artery, essential crossing of the Boardman River, serving the airport. It's an opportunity for non-motorized connections. If you happen to been down South Airport recently, you would see the new sidewalk, which was completed today, so no more delays on South Airport with the lane shut down, but Elmer's just finished that up basically from Team Bob's down to the corner at Barlow. Now they're going to be going north along the east side of Barlow up to Floresta, but that's a connection. Now people in that area up on Barlow will be able to get down to the Boardman Lake Loop. So those types of connections are really valuable along this corridor. In 2022, when we did the survey for the master plan, there was a couple of statements there that people either agreed or strongly agreed that we feel relate to this project. Redevelopment of outdated commercial areas, certainly, places like Cherryland and so forth have great potential for redevelopment. Also that the improvement of corridors through, different, not just the transportation element of reducing driveways and so forth, but just the aesthetic of it. Sidewalks, adding trees and so forth from the landscaping side of it. There's some, certain elements to it. Our master plan does identify some goals and objectives in there that support corridors. And then just getting into the process, I think I had it in 3 phases here. I just kind of broke it down really down into 4. I took the last one in terms of plan development and implementation and just put those into 3 and 4 as opposed to just 3. But right now we're just, this is our initial discussions. If it takes off, we'll do some more investigation, and then from that point would actually develop a formal process. Then that's when really you get into community engagement, assessment, visioning. That kind of gives you an overall look and feel for the desire of what that corridor will look like, and then gets into the details of that. And actually that's the plan development is when we get into the things like access management, looking at the non-motorized connections, do we need water sewer improvements, stormwater, and et cetera. Those things will come out of that plan development. And then looking in terms of implementation. So that's where we get into looking at resources to improve that. And then I just couldn't help myself but just show the opportunity to really transform a corridor. Obviously, this is more on the aesthetics, but I think it has the potential to really, I think often people have they kind of wrestle with South Airport. I mean, it can create a lot of anxiety and stress and so forth, and I always look at things as they're never really permanent, so there are always opportunities for change, not just change in the aesthetic, but also investment into a corridor. So I think that's really what lays out in front of us.
This happens to be the same corridor as the example that we looked at. This is 131 and 31 in Petoskey. So that's showing sort of some of the results of that planning process. And it's taking 2 state highways that are still really busy highways. That didn't change, but it seems more manageable, and the picture kind of shows the aesthetic look of it. And it's something where, especially South Airport, the existing conditions are they are what they are. But as John said, it's like nothing's ever permanent in the long scheme. So there would be, I imagine, sort of what's our part of our investigation would start with what's sort of the near-term possibilities versus longer-term possibilities, or if there were redevelopment. Mostly looking at, for like that MSU Federal Credit Union example, we were able to do that. It was a special use. I think we tied a lot to the special use process, but it was good to have something to say, like, yeah, this is important to reduce the number of driveways. And if there was something like an access management plan or full corridor plan, that it was more just like, this is what the whole corridor should look like. It would sort of add teeth to something like that for anything that came up or down that corridor. In this case, South Airport, since there's a lot more things closer together than on 31. A lot of kind of older development. So how can we work with what we've got? And if we have opportunities in the future, how can we utilize those? Yeah.
There's, I believe that there's a capacity problem with that highway out there. It currently is handling more vehicles than its design capacity. And anything we do to improve it's just gonna make that condition worse. And I've talked to the road commission, they said they can't buy more right away, that's as big as it's gonna get. So we need to address that in this little process also.
And knowing that buying more property is not really an option, and that would have a lot of detrimental effects. There's a lot of established businesses, like you wouldn't want to buy those out. We want that area to thrive. So what solutions can present themselves in absence of that? And that would be part of planning for that corridor.
Good luck.
And that's why we need to do it.
Gonna be a tough one.
John?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do with that corridor is, they've talked about the access management, and if we cut down the number of driveways, we're not cutting down the number of cars, but we're actually improving the usability factor and the safety factor for people, the same number of people, but they have to hit the brakes fewer times because there are not so many people stopping in front of them to turn into more driveways. So just, but I hear what you're saying. It is overcapacity. It's a very challenging road, but every little bit that we can help might be worth trying to do.
I would agree.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to solve anything, but we certainly have the opportunity to improve things. And I've always felt that even if we were to have had the Hartman-Hammond Bridge installed, we'd still need to address South Airport.
Yes.
So it's a transportation corridor, and that's, most of us look at it that way, but a lot of us also, it's an economic location as well, and that's important for us to find that balance. So I think there's opportunity here.
You know, I would complement that, John, by suggesting that the plan itself, the corridor plan, could have if Hartman-Hammond doesn't happen, or if Hartman-Hammond does happen, which would frame what South Airport Road could be if some of that capacity was distributed to another east-west connector south of South Airport.
Does it allow more things to happen or different kind of improvements to happen?
What things cannot happen on South Airport Road because it is overcapacity, and what could happen, it would help make a case perhaps for further case to support a Hartman-Hammond crossing or wherever.
Yeah.
Well, more thoughts, anyone? Well, John, Steve, thank you for the work on this. We'll look forward to hearing more on that as well.
I think
two
step
more
one would be take it to the board. I don't know if we have a schedule or plan to do that. We'll talk with the manager and supervisor kind of when they want to take it to them. And then, a lot of that initial, I like how you mentioned doing the schedule for the master plan, and I'll throw it right back to the plan commission. It was nice to break it down that way and able to, like, you guys gave really good feedback at each of those. I thought it helped to do like topic by topic and kind of utilize the study sessions to get some really good feedback and direction. Planning commission, everyone really shaped kind of the direction of that plan because we were able to do it topic by topic, section by section. And I'm including Kara, who was in the public for all of those and then joined the planning commission. So I think something similar, utilizing the study sessions that we've got, would be a good way to do that again.
Great.
Also, I don't know if anyone caught the South Airport is Grand Traverse County Road 620. So similar to like M22 is sort of a lifestyle brand now. We could throw that on a shirt.
Help raise funds.
We've already thought about it. So
Don't walk out in front of my car.
I've lived here for 50 years. That's the first time I knew South Airport Road was County Road 620.
Yeah.
I saw that there
I
tonight.
actually made that logo. There's, that is, well, that is, no, I didn't make it. I made the 620 one. So all Grand Traverse County
Yeah.
has that different, like 663 and all that. So I couldn't find one with 620 on it, so I had to make it.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we got the copyrights on it,
Well, it's public domain, so we can throw
Not
it.
that one.
No one. Yeah.
I'm glad
You
it's
don't get
facing blue.
tattoos.
Yeah, that was really hard for me.
I mean, we can do 620 adventure cards. Yeah. Go kart racing. Go trampolining. Go to the mall.
Well, all right. Next item on the agenda is new business. There doesn't appear to be any new business. We'll go to public comment. There's no public for comment. We don't have any other business to talk about, so let's talk about item 10, items for our next agenda, July 9th, 2025.
Yeah, right now, the findings of fact for Lake Point major amendment is pretty straightforward. Macy's, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything yet on that, so that's a kind of a question mark. We'll see if we have something by this Monday.
It could continue to be tabled if they don't
Yeah.
supply any new information.
High Tops, same. So at this point, we've had some conversations with them. They're getting out more information. They've been working with security agencies and kind of looking at their site, but haven't had anything yet. So there's a good question mark on that one. The last one is something I want you just to maybe be thinking about is Wayne Kiley is a gentleman that's met with us a few times looking at South Airport near Town Line Road. So this is the area across from the airport. It's kind of where there's the upholstery shop, there's the rifle shop that's there. This area is zoned for low-density residential, but it's planned for multifamily. So they're looking at some different options there, but if you're out going to Costco or whatever, if you're on that side of town, take a look at that area. They got some ideas from that. But they'll be coming in with conceptual review. So a lot of activity over there. So I don't know, you might want to avoid it at this point, but maybe an off hour if you're down that way. So that's it for the July 9th agenda at this point.
There's
So
actually apartments being built right now called Town Line Flats on that east side.
correct. Yep, they're right there.
That would be East Bay Township.
Yes. Yep. East Bay Township there. To the north of that, the airport Costco, that's all within the city.
Yep, that's Triple Point. Yeah, that one in East Bay I think had stalled for a while, but someone finally picked up on
Yeah,
it.
it's under construction.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I'd make a motion, we adjourn.
everybody have a good 4th of July, enjoy the Cherry Festival, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right.